All right, hello. This is our second recording on sources, and this one's going to cover your primary sources. Now, if you've watched the other one, I did briefly go over what a primary source is, but I'm going to do that again because it was brief, so it could have been missed. A primary source is any source, document, or anything really can establish some historical fact or a person's opinion, something that was recorded by a person who was either participating in the events that you're studying in your research or who observed it firsthand themselves. Right. So if, for example, you are doing something on the ancient Roman legions, right? Your Roman military officer, say Julius Caesar, for example, did an autobiography and he wrote his accounts of his campaigns against the Gauls. That would be a primary source because he was there. He was in it. He was fighting. He was one of the participants, right? Or if you found a letter that one of his soldiers wrote to their parents, um, and he described what just happened that day when they were fighting the Gauls, that's a primary source. Now, if I'm writing a book and I'm using those letters and I'm writing this book, well, those are my sources. Those are primary sources when I write that book. And you use my book as a source, then that becomes a secondary source because I was not there. I did not participate and I did not see it, obviously. Sometimes it can get a little murky, right, as to what is or is not a primary source. In more recent times, for example, if we had the U.S. World War II, you might have a newspaper account. We typically think of that as a primary source, but it depends. If the newspaper reporter was there at the D-Day and he was an embedded reporter and he went on the beach with the soldiers and he was there actually seeing that fighting going on, that's a primary source. If that guy gets there 2 days later after the fighting stopped and he interviews the soldiers, then that newspaper article is a secondary source. Now, some of that is close enough that we allow it to be categorized as a primary source. And that's going to be true, especially on world history, because a lot of the accounts are considered primary or used as primary, accepted as primary, when in fact, sometimes the guy's writing about it 50 years later, right, and it was not there. So, but it's kind of the nature of the thing. Now, we talk about sources, and those sources also don't have to be documents. Now, we are doing history, so we're going through the historical records. So we do want at least a good part of our primary source information to be documentary form, words on paper or stone or whatever they wrote on. All right. But it's not the only thing that can be a primary source. So if you did something on ancient times, ancient Egypt, Rome, Greece, whatever, then those cultures do have a lot of stuff in the archaeological records. So if you're obviously not going to go out to, ancient China and actually get one of the terracotta soldiers, for example, or even view it and describe it. So in some cases, we allow those photographs that you can find up on the internet of sources like that. If you did Greek art, pictures of the statues. If you did Roman architecture, pictures of the Pantheon, those things would be acceptable as primary sources for our paper. Right? If you came down later, y'all don't have this luxury, but my U.S. history class, second half of U.S. history, told them in their recording, if they find film, speech given by a politician or sound recording like one of FDR's fireside chats, those audio, video recordings, those can be primary sources, right? For your purposes, you could use the artwork, the physical artwork, pictures of the artwork as a primary source as well. Some of those, pictures of maybe some of those archaeological relics, but if you don't want to get too much of that in there because you do want to have some from the historical record, right? World history has some different challenges, so that's why I'm doing your primary source a little separately. And to be honest, this is just going to be to get you started. You're going to really have to do the work to go in and find those sources. You might have to come back and get some guidance if you're just drawing a blank and not finding stuff. But for the topics that I saw, you should be able to find sources. And again, you might just need someone to point you in the right direction to get started, but they are available to you. You see on your screen, I have Google, and I did not go to Galileo this time. Now, Galileo does have a thing, and I'll show that to you as well. But Galileo does have an ability to pull primary sources. But the way it's organized and what they put in there is really geared much more towards Georgia history and U.S. history than it is towards world history. So I will go over there and I'll start with that just very briefly. But again, I'm going to find that most cases, my students have to go out and find their primary sources, somewhere else. Again, you can go to a library and find physical documents, paper, books, whatever. That's fine. You can go to the museum. I don't know what they have down at the Hyde Museum, but if they have like a ancient Greek art display, you can go down there and visit it. And if you're looking at a Greek statue, then you can include that as a source because you did see it. So that is something you can do. But most of the stuff that is out there, you're probably going to access because it's, again, world history. Most of the stuff is over on the other side of the ocean, and we just, might like to be able to go over there, but we just can't do it, right? So I'm going to switch over to Galileo, so this will take a second to load. There we go. Okay. So if I wanted to do something like, let's say, the old Greek, I'll tell you what, I would just pick something everybody does. Pyramids of Egypt. We can look at the Great Pyramids specifically. We did this for the secondary sources, and what we're going to see is we're going to have a lot of the same kind of things, all kinds of sources. There's an image there. That image could actually be used as a primary source for y'all. Of course, that image you can find just about anywhere. You see some, reference material. We got secondary sources there. There's academic journals that we could use. We have some we couldn't use at all. The periodicals, of course. There's some news in there. We've got some video, and again, those video recordings, the one in the middle that actually shows the pyramids, you could use actually as primary source material because what you're looking at is the actual pyramid. That's what your real source is. Again, and if you're doing a professional article, then we'd want you to actually go visit Egypt and view it, but we can't do that, obviously. All right. Over on the left, you may remember we used that limit to. We did the scholarly peer review, and I said I usually don't pick that one because down here limit by type gives me more options, so I can actually set it to show two things. In this case, the academic journals and the ebooks. If you scroll down, you see a link that says show more, and it brings up this menu. And I have some choices here, and sometimes this is one of those where you'll see primary sources documents. Now, if there is not a single primary source document in any of their databases on your topic, that line will not show up there. It only shows the one where there's actual hits, all right? In other words, actual documents that fall into those categories. But this one does, so I'm gonna hit update. And I'm gonna have a lot of primary source documents. Now, I do have to go through these because as you can see from the titles, most of these are probably useless, right? Life in the mountains, they might do something. This is searching text to see if there's great and pyramids in the text anywhere. So this might be talking about how one of the mountains is shaped like a great pyramid, right? The original design of the Great Seal of the U.S. is going to have some of that stuff, pictures of the pyramids, right? Phidias, Greek art, that might be useful. Death of Cleopatra does not really relate to the pyramids per se. So some of this may or may not be useful. So you see, it's not necessarily going to get you the same kind of results. I can scroll through here, and out of 560, it is possible that I find 5 whole sources in there that are going to work with that topic. But as you can see, Galileo is a little, less useful for the primary sources than it was the secondary sources, especially for world history. It's just not geared that way. To be honest, the stuff that you're going to have is going to be common stuff. So obviously, we couldn't do a paper on just the Great Pyramids, right? You have to narrow it down. I think someone is looking at how they were built, and that was something that's been done to death, but it just so happened the timing was right because there have been some recent discoveries. If you find those sources, then it's a topic you can do. Next semester it won't be, because I can guarantee I analyze those sources so deeply that there'll be 50 articles on just those sources that they found within the next year. So, all right, here we got just a Google search bar. You can just start off by looking at world history primary sources. And this is, this works better for U.S. history. For us, you'll see a lot of, if you scroll down, you're still getting stuff, right? A lot of this stuff is going to be, again, it's going to be very basic. It's going to be stuff that's not really usable for you, because, you should be doing a narrowly focused topic to where, the peace treaty, the Magna Carta itself. Actually, I think someone's doing the Magna Carta itself, but the Magna Carta itself, in that case, you probably have to use as a primary source, but it's not one of the ones that you would want to be relying on for, information, for historical documentation, how it got created, all right? But you do have to analyze it since your paper's on that, right? Some of these, like this top one, you see research.lib.buffalo.edu. EDU tells me it's an education website. Buffalo, I know it's probably a college. When you see lib, or if you look at number 2, you see LibGuides, that tells me it's probably a library, university library, and they've got a guide to primary sources for world history. These are going to be linking to things that are usually a little bit more advanced. And you scroll down, you see plenty of links in there. There's all going to be databases that you can go to. Archived material, some of it you can see, like the top one is the American Antiquarian Society. Useless to you because we don't do U.S. stuff. I mean, U.S. doesn't exist. We get to 1500, so we haven't even started any colonization of any part of what is now the U.S., right? Then you'll see a lot of other archives there, and some of them are topical, like if you did something on women's history, right? That one looks like it might be useful. But when you go down and read, it's second half of the 20th century, so that would be useless to you as well. Diplomatic studies and training, oral history collection, U.S. history again. So we see a lot of U.S. stuff, right? This one, we're starting to get into some things that are U.S. China, from the empire to republic. Looks like it might, but then I see the date, 1854 to 49. Okay. I see one for digital collections, Finding Age, Digital Library of America, early English books online. There we go. That's one right there. So that's going to be stuff 1473. So it just starts in the period we're looking at. That might have some stuff we can use. All right. European views of the America, again, you might get some tail end stuff there. A lot of stuff that is more recent, and that's one of the problems that you do find. Is we see slavery, and it looks like it's U.S. New World slavery, so that's not as useful to us either. Looks like a lot of stuff that's more recent. They don't seem to have a lot of stuff that really is going to help us on this one. So I'm looking at kind of like a dead end. Let me go over here to the West Sound Academy, right, and see what they've got. Specific time periods: ancient, medieval, French. That looks a little better by location: African, Asian, European, right? So I'll take a quick look at African and see if that is going to have something useful to us. African History Sourcebook. There's a manuscript scripts project. This one's interesting, by the way. If you see this, when you get up to towards the end of the semester, I think it's actually the very last discussion board we do, you have a video on the library at Timbuktu. It was one of the great universities during the Middle Ages, and kind of fell into disrepair when the Europeans took over and colonized the area. And it's basically just been sitting there with a bunch of manuscripts. And there might be 100 different works that we thought were lost from ancient Rome, ancient Greece, and they're sitting there this whole time waiting for someone to actually find them. It's gotten a lot of attention recently because this library has been caught up in a lot of the fighting there between the people who run the country and a lot of the Islamic jihadist or groups that are active in that area, many of whom view that stuff as old pagan material and would love nothing more than to destroy it. So a lot of that's continuing to be lost. There is some effort to bring that back. Apparently we can't get to the site, unfortunately. So that's another thing that you'll find on some of these. I'm going to go look at the African History Sourcebook. This is one of the ones that I commonly recommend anyway. It's not just the African History Sourcebook, by the way. It is the Internet History Sourcebook, and it is organized several different ways. You'll find some stuff cross-referenced. So ancient Africa, you'll see in the African History Sourcebook, but if you look at the top, you see there's an ancient history source book. It'll be there too. So you can look at it by time or by location, sometimes by subject matter. When you come down, you see that there is quite a bit, and it comes all the way up to modern times. Right? There's a lot of this stuff that might be like this, secondary. It might be useful to you, but this is where you really start getting into some stuff. You find some primary things. And again, there's going to be some secondary stuff listed in here too. You see it down here, a chronology of Egyptian history. That's going to be a timeline that people have put together now. Right? But a lot of these are going to be primary sources. You see the hymn to the Nile. If I click on that, it is translated, obviously, and I don't think anybody can read hieroglyphics in my class. But you see they've got the translation. That's your primary document right there. Right? It tells you where the original source was, so it's got a citation, right? And basically, if that's useful to you, if you're doing something on the religious aspects, that might be something that you would look at. Some of these link off their website, so you see the palette, basically a drawing of that, but that's one of those where it's not a document, it's an object. But that could be used as a primary source. Right? Instruction, basically learning, in other words, in this case. So I've got quite a few primary documents that are useful to me. Right? As I scroll down, this is, again, the African source book, so a lot of that is going to be, the Egyptian stuff in the ancient times especially is the best recorded. But I can find here's some stuff on everyday life. I think some people were looking at that. Music, art and architecture. I think, yeah, there we go. Somebody, I believe, wanted to do something regarding death and the processes of that. So you see several things here. So for that person, this is like the perfect place to go. Right? This will come up, by the way, if you just type in Internet History Sourcebook, it'll take you right to it. This should be the top link in Google. So and we can test that actually. It does come very good. It comes up right as the very top one. And then you can start looking at it. It's got some stuff at the top, so you can look at ancient, medieval, modern, Byzantine studies. We wouldn't modern history. We actually might start with the Renaissance, but Byzantine would be usable. I think I have one person doing a Byzantine topic, so that would be one that they would go to right there. Ancient and medieval are obviously where our focus would be, although we can take a quick look. Modern history, some people can put the Renaissance in at the beginning of that. Looks like it's going to be in the medieval history source book, so it's really just those two that we're going to look at. Yeah, it goes down to the Renaissance. So, right. And again, Byzantine, if you're looking at specific topics. If you look at something like, again, there's the African, East Asian, global, Indian, Islamic, Jewish, lesbian and gay, science, women's. Some of these documents are going to be in 2, 3, 4 of these. So they're cross-referenced, but they're organized. So if you're looking specifically for stuff on women's history, you can find it and not have to go through all of this and separate it out. All right. I'm going to go to the Ancient History Source Book, and then you'll see it has some stuff on the left, studying history, human origins, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Persia, etc., all the way down to Rome, and then the end of that Roman period. So if you were looking at, say, Mesopotamia, you could click on it and take you straight to the documents there. They've been cleaning this up. This was put together by a guy named Paul Halsall back in the 90s, one of the first projects of its type. And he had a great site up. A lot of these links you might actually click on and find that they're dead. They don't go to a document. I think they've been cleaning it up. He went to another university and nobody really maintained it. They let it kind of lapse, and there's been an effort recently to back up. So I think they've been working on that. But attributed, if you've got the title of the document, copy and paste it, and then search for it. And a lot of times you can find another copy on another website somewhere. Right? You see this goes all the way through. By time period, it goes chronologically. So you get down to, the Babylonian periods. Then you start getting into their native cultures, Assyria, the new Neo-Babylonian Empire. Right. There's some stuff on Phoenicia. Nobody took one of those this time, but I think you will. Go back up here, and probably a few people, actually, there were definitely a few people having some stuff on Greece, so I can come up here and you can look at here. Major historians, these are the works of actual historians. That would actually be secondary source material, but it's still relied on a lot. Crete, so if you went back to the Minoan, we've got a little bit on Mycenae, not a whole lot, but it's going to be a tough one to do. I think I did do a Mycenaean topic, and you might go and just type in Mycenaean primary documents and see if that'll lead you to some lists like this that are more focused. You can see it covers quite a bit, extensive stuff. There's a ton of stuff on ancient Greece, ancient Rome. All right. Rome from the Republic all the way to the collapse of the empire. All right. Religion, of course, you're going to see the early spread of Christianity. So there's just tons and tons of stuff there. You go to the medieval source book, it of course picks up. There it actually has a note about the bad links there. As you can see, it was started in 1996. Right. On the left here, you can see it's got a bunch of different categories now. I'm going to look at maybe the Anglo-Saxons, maybe come down. You can see it's, the Crusades. I think somebody was doing the how they set up the Crusader state. So after that first crusade, I'll go to link straight down to it. I'm looking at how that was set up, so I'm not really going to care about urban speech. That's how it gets started. Journeys and battles, historians of the first crusade, and there we got the kingdom of Jerusalem. So this is where I'm going for those primary documents. I might be able to get all of them right here. Right. Some of this looks like it might be later as the kingdom goes on, but you can definitely find some stuff, I'm sure. And use one document to maybe clue you in. The more you learn about a topic, the more you might know what kind of search terms to look at to go find other documents, right? All right, you see a lot of stuff here. You see, for example, the Anglo-Saxons, and then you come down, you see England. It's kind of going to be organized by time period. Anglo-Saxons are really the early part of English history. Gets me down to the topics. I think I have one student who was looking at the slavery in England. So this has two documents apparently right there that might be useful. Text and translations of manumission documents, and the other in various texts, plural, on Anglo-Saxon slavery. So those are actually going to be separate. That Laws of Inn, that is a primary document. The Laws of Alfred is a separate primary document. So this page has 4 primary documents on it right there by itself. All right. And that was just one link. I've got the other one, manumission documents. This is, manumission is the legal process of freeing slaves, and you can see it carries me to a book off-site. I don't know if y'all can see that. Yeah, it does show up for you. Okay. And this, I'm gonna go to my table of contents and see what it says there. Manumission starting on about page 6, looks like 621. And I could go through there, and it's probably got, with that many pages, dozens of documents. Notice that this is like a multi-volume, so that's actually like right after the table of contents where it starts, right? Notice they're in Latin too, so the usage might be somewhat limited to you, right? If I come down, that gets me up to a certain time period. I'm gonna go back to that and start that over. It's giving me a little trouble backing up there, but if I go to that Anglo-Saxon period, that's going to kind of end probably around the time of Alfred the Great, maybe just a little bit after. And if it doesn't, it'll probably go up until the Battle of Hastings. That Anglo-Saxon period kind of ends around 1066 when the Normans come over and invade, and then it switches. So if I'm like somewhere around that cusp, around the 1000 to 1100, and I know that changed, and I know some of my primary documents would be under this one, where it's England. And it looks like it picks up kind of just, it has some of the last stuff from the Anglo-Saxon period repeated, and then picks up from there. Early English laws. So again, if you for that student who was doing the English slave trade during this period, you could go there, and there's probably some laws related to slavery. It looks like we had some direct links to them on that other page, but that would be another way to get there. All right. Norman England after that, then you could come and see if they still acknowledge the existence of slavery, maybe in the laws there, but you basically just got to keep going through time period by time period. And this is arguably the best web page that you'll find. Another one that I use, though, is the Avalon Project. That is very good as well. Right? If I just type that in my search, that comes up also, and basically this has got a lot of stuff. It's more legal centered and international relations centered. You can see basically a lot of it's more modern, but the first 2 links, ancient documents and medieval documents, right? And there might not be a whole lot. I'm going to look here. It's got, a few things. Not all, Code of Hammurabi is there. Julian law on agrarian matters, 58 BC. Law, these are 12 tables. And a lot of it's the big stuff that you probably wouldn't find to be that useful for your research paper. Right? As you get more recent, it starts getting more stuff in it, though. So if I look at, let's say, medieval, this gets me up to $13.99. I can see that I've got more, right? And again, there's the Magna Carta itself, but finding a copy of that is not really a challenge. Some of these others might be a little bit more useful. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, by the way, is a publication. They recorded the events every year, so this would be very useful if you're doing England, because that one link is not one document. It links you to a collection of documents, and then it'll tell you, what you've got there in the history from that period. So if we were looking, I don't know, let's say the 800s, we come here and it would give you the main events from each year. They did basically recorded the main event of each year, kind of. Some of these, though, are just exact documents. We got Anglo-Saxon law, so that'd be a collection, but we got the Bull of Pope Adrian. This is a single document, right? Again, its usefulness depends, right? It depends on your topic. That gets you to $13.99. 15th century is in our time period too, so we could use that one. There's not a whole lot in there, but again, it can be useful. But basically, you just got to go through and search. I would, start off, if you've got a topic, then start off with your topic instead of world history primary documents. You do that, and then you might find those guides and links to databases that hold stuff. What you really want is stuff that's relevant to your topic, though, so you want to see if you can find something. And let's just say that I was looking at, I'm trying to think what some of y'all's topics were that would be useful, but let's say I did something on primary documents in India, right? This might or might not give me some links. You got CNU library guide, so I've got one of those. See, I've got some from Marco Polo that might be useful to me in this context. Depends on which part of the Mongol period I'm looking at. Mongols themselves did not write, or at least they were not literate when they conquered. They did, of course, learn writing from the people they conquered. So later on, they were writing some stuff, but of course, most of the written stuff is other people writing about them, right? So you'll see we got some stuff in there, and I got some links, and then maybe I'm doing, I don't know, let's see, Roman medicine. And then I go to one of these library guides, and it might give me some other stuff. I'll probably find some stuff in the Internet History Sourcebook on medicine, by the way. So lots and lots of stuff in here. And Mediterranean memory is fairly decent. As I get in there, I would probably start finding some stuff. So like Galen was the premier medical practitioner. If I look for him, I could probably find his writings. This one is a document, which is why it came up. So it may or may not be useful to me. And this one's opening up in Word. I'll take a quick look at that before I pull it up, because again, it may or may not be useful to us. It's taking a long time to load as well, so I'll just, while that's loading, go on and look at some of the others. All right. Medical News Today articles. This is secondary source material. But let me scroll down. Let's see if they did a good job of recording their sources. It doesn't look like they did. Sometimes you find these articles. This is why we don't use, by the way, web pages. There's not a single source here. If you pick up a history book or if you get an academic journal, they're going to have footnotes just like you're doing, and they're going to take you right to where they're getting their information. You don't know where they could just be making this up, and we just don't know. So if you find those good articles, though, go through their bibliographies and use the same sources that they use. To be honest, even Wikipedia is better than some of the other websites in that regard. And again, we say don't use Wikipedia. Don't use Wikipedia as a source. Don't put a footnote in there and stick it in your bibliography. But that doesn't mean don't use Wikipedia. It can be very useful if you use it correctly. All right? And the same is true for the other reference works too. It doesn't mean you can't use them. You just can't cite them. I'm never going to put a footnote or put something in the bibliography that says I'm using Wikipedia. But when I come down here, they do have this section, sources. And this might be useful to me. Further reading, that might be useful to me. And that'll guide me to sources sometimes. Now they got all these footnotes in here. So I can, and they actually have some stuff in there that they are using as sources that they don't always put in their list of sources for some reason, right? It's one of the problems with Wikipedia. It's not done professionally. And so I would go through those footnotes, those notes, and the sources and see if there's things I can use. If I go to some of these, I occasionally can go link straight to their source and use it. Sometimes like this one, they're using Flash, and of course Flash is obsolete, so you won't see that one. I think this is that same website we were at. It's supposed to be, it's a bad link. But again, it's a process like that. If you go, this one, Hockwick, Jeremy, Journal of Royal Medicine, and I scroll down, this is a real journal. I'm gonna find real footnotes. That number one right there, Celsus AC de Medicina Florent, is written later, but that is looks like probably Renaissance period. These are the kind of things that might be useful as primary sources. Those sources will guide me to the primary sources. So that's, even in those, if you go through the secondary sources that you pull yourself and look through their bibliographies and their footnotes, you're likely to be able to find your primary sources that way. Then search the title of those documents on the web, and there's a good chance you can find a digital version out there somewhere, right? And that makes it actually getting a lot easier. Now, I've pulled up that document. It's not really all that helpful. Actually, yes, it is. Okay. So I'm going to switch this over to that Word document. It takes a little longer for another application to come up. There we go. All right, this is the bibliography, and I can see a few things. So, for example, Antonius Ioannidis, one of the Roman physicians, I copied that link in there, Ancient Medicine URL, that's going to have some primary source documents from Hippocrates. Let's see, skip down. There's going to be Hippocratic writings, the third one down there. Those are going to be things. Along the next one, Hippocrates, the Book of Prognostics. Those are all primary sources. So that's getting me the titles of primary sources. Some of them actually have the web links. I can go find them. This is not a journal article, by the way. It's like a short paper, but if you find those, cull through their bibliographies and don't reinvent the wheel. Someone's already found the sources. You use their sources. Now, It is a little bit more work for y'all than it is for U.S. history. In some ways. Some ways it can be actually kind of easier. But again, if you're having real trouble, then let me know or let the library know. The library staff can really help you. You let me know. Sometimes I can help you. Sometimes I'll refer you to the library staff. It depends on how busy I am at the time and stuff like that. But use those resources. That's really going to be the thing. It is you. You've got to go find these things, but don't make it harder than it is. If you're spending like an hour on it and you don't have anything at all to show for it, get help. Don't spend 2 hours on there and still have nothing. So get some assistance. Don't waste the time. Don't spend 10 minutes and give up either, and then call me because I'm gonna be like, well, why couldn't you find anything if it takes me like 30 seconds to dig up sources? I would say give it about a half hour. Go through there, think of everything you can, search for about a half hour. If you're having trouble, go contact the library, see if they can help you with it. All right. That gets us done with the primary sources for your class. The next time I'm going to come back and revisit this, it's going to be the writing guide, and we'll look at how to start actually putting this stuff together. With this one, I would say go ahead and start really going out there and looking and get those sources submitted so that I can get those grades put in on those assignments. And then you should be in a good position to really start finishing this document up. We do want to get this done as soon as possible. Again, summer is very short. Increase days, we can finish it up and we can turn our attention to other stuff. And I've got it set up so once you get done with the research paper, the workload actually starts getting lighter towards the end of the semester. So everything's kind of front loaded. Most of your work's up here, and then it'll ease off as we get towards the end. All right, but that's it for now. Y'all go on out, start searching, and good luck. Hope you can find some sources, and again, get help if you can. All right.